As we know, our school children are all judged on performance. The greatest drawback to our education system is that the children we see them, we judge them, we respect them by their performance. And what is the performance? Marks, correct? I stood first in the state of Kerala for the school final examination, SSLC. I topped not 300 or 3,000, 30,000 children. I topped 300,000 children. And where has it taken me? Nowhere. I sit in a small cubby hole in Cochin. That's where I've reached. There are some of my friends who just barely passed their SSLC examination. Today, some of them sit in the highest positions that an Indian can achieve in many parts of the world. So our performance has to be judged by our skills, not by our skill deficits. That's the message I need to give you today. That's the only message I want to give you today. So school children who are being judged by performance, you'll find that in your class, at least 1/4 of your children in each class, they do not perform to their potential, correct? At least 1 in 5 children or 1 in 4 children, they do not perform to the best of their potential. Why is it so is what we should ask. That's why is it so is what I'm going to show you today. And if that be so, then what should we do? For a child, you have any number of people who are trying to make them write better, spell better, write the spelling better by repeating and repeating and repeating. Still they write the same old wrong spelling again. So we have to understand there is something wrong with them. So we find alternate skills. That's what we should do as teachers. That's why I say teachers, they're the lifeline for these poor children. They're lifeline. You can save a life for the life and the family. Therefore, if you listen to this, or if when you go home, if you have not understood what I'm trying to communicate, go home and read these and put it into practice in your class, you'll find the world changes underneath. So why can't they perform? If they can't perform, what afflicts them? What is the problem with them? And that is what I want to convey to you very quickly. Who you think is good, he is intelligent, but he is not performing to his potential. He's not doing well in class. Each of you can think of such a child, can't you? Think of one child in your class and try and see if you can project what you see here onto that. And that is if I have done that enough, I've conveyed my message to you, and I've done my mission today to Udupi well. I'll quickly go through schooling versus education. The schools have nothing to do with education, because schooling is one aspect of education, but education is totally different. I'll go through the rest. I don't want to go through them and waste your time. Many of you must have read Mark Twain's books, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. This wonderful man is known as the father of American literature. Anybody knows that? But he did everything that is possible under the sun before he became a writer, because he's a multitasker. He can do a lot of things. That's how many of our children who are not doing well in class are. I don't know whether you know that Winston Churchill got a Nobel Prize. What did he get the Nobel Prize for? Did he get it for literature? He got it for literature. But the poor fellow could not write. His father called him an idiot of a son. He actually engaged somebody to give his dictate to him and write the books which brought him Nobel Prize. So you can understand that schooling, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, what we call the 3 R's, they're so totally different from education. Reading, writing, arithmetic is only one part of education. Education is actually what the Lord has given in our head as skills and talents. And if we can actually, as teachers, deliberately look for these talents, deliberately look for these skills, and actually help these children to nurture those skills, then you are going to see a different child. And that is education. That is what Mark Twain said. He never let his schooling interfere with his education. I will not go into the details of what he already did. Our own center, I don't want to talk to you about my center, it's not the reason. We started to evaluate post-school performance about 35 years ago. It is very difficult for parents to ask them and for them to bring children to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist himself has some problem. So you can imagine. It's a huge story. I have 3 children and all 3 are psychiatrists. So you can imagine family history of psychiatry, So it was very difficult for parents to bring them to me or to any psychiatrist. So I used this fishing bait. I told them whenever a child fails 2 or 3 times, let us look for the brain reason why the child fails. And that's how we started about 40 years ago actually. And then it is easy for parents to bring the child because they would say, we took him for counseling. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? So they don't have a problem because the child is not taken for a psychiatric problem, he is taken for a reading writing problem or marks problem. But what we found after a few years is that, these children who had difficulty with the 3 R's, reading, writing and arithmetic, some of them came back to us and said, I am doing this, I am in a wonderful world, I am in Dubai, I am doing this job, and I am the assistant director of this organization, etc. And we found that these children, they had huge success stories after these years in school where they struggled, and they come back and say these success stories using what? Using the alternate skills. Because the Lord has given them alternate skills than reading and writing and arithmetic. You understand? So they became big. They became huge. So these alternate skills, therefore, are the real world skills. That is what we all survey with. And the CGC mission, therefore, today, especially to teachers, is look for skills instead of the skill deficits in your children. The children who sit in your class. You look for the skills. I keep telling the parents who bring their children, I said, if the child cannot learn the way they teach in school, you teach the child the way the child can learn at home. Right? The child cannot read and understand. When you read out to him, he understands very well. So what do? The child comes home and read out to him. When you read, the child understands. Because listening comprehension is a different skill. It's an alternate skill. Reading comprehension is a stupid skill. So you read out to him and let him learn. And that's why using all those, we have to look for skills and not skill deficits to bridge the gap between what? Between schooling and the terrific and the awesome education. And this transformation is into future success. That is education. Do you understand the difference? How much we struggle to make these children write and write and write. You give the imposition for 10 times. But what do? You transform him into a future success by using education. Not really the reading and writing if he's not good at that. If I can't sing, how can you give me a music teacher to make me sing? It's exactly the same, na? I have this is my favorite side actually. It's actually what I told you. You talk about school performance and future success. When everyone goes up, you go back to your own schooling days. The A grade students in your class, they work for the B grade students. It's one of my closest friends in medicine because he took 7 years to pass his MBBS. We all took 5 years. But by the time we were in the final year, he had already bought some land in a peripheral town where he belongs. By the time he came into house job, his hospital was built and complete. Many of my classmates, because of the gold medals that they got in for the best specialties across the country. By the time they were doing their MD or MS, he went to them and requested them to come and work with him. So by the time his hospital was finished, this B grade student, he had a huge hospital. In his hospital, all these A grade students in our class were working. You understand? He has made a wonderful hospital. He put them together because he's a B grade student. So all the A graders, they go and work for these B graders, correct? You look at, I also look at some of my C graders in my school. If you look at them in Cochin, these are the fellows who run all the businesses, correct? Where are the A graders? So your performance requirement in school is no matter for your future success. The D students, all of us know them. The D students, they go around the country, dedicate buildings and bridges to the nation, our politicians, correct? Don't laugh, because they're pretty smart people. They have these alternate skills. So every 5 years, they come back to us and we continue to vote for them, correct? They make promises and we believe them, we swallow them, irrespective of what they do. So that's because they have management skills, huge management skills. That's what they have. So it's not a laughing matter. It's a huge alternate skill. So therefore, post-school performance, PSP is not a parameter of future success or future failure. But if you don't identify them early enough, the personalities of these children in your classes, in your lower class, in your secondary classes, the personalities get snuffed out. And these children, they may go astray, they may become bad children, bad citizens. So if you have to launch these children in the dreams of their life for future, you have to identify these skill deficits and help them to circumvent them. You understand what circumvention is? To go around them and still succeed. That's the duty of a good teacher. I was impressed by chairperson was saying this morning. There are a lot of things in which you can encourage them to get on with their lives. Pulling out their alternate skills and helping them to train in them. And that is the dream that they build for the future. As I said before, 20 to 25% of the children in our class, they have poor school performance. They're afflicted, they're infected, they're afflicted by these silent neurodevelopmental disorders. They are brain disorders. Neurodevelopmental disorders. The brain cells have not matured enough to be able to perform these functions that are required in school. That's all. I'm very poor with my technology. If you give me a pointer which is different, which moves the slides, I'll be confused. So we have skills which are different. I'm pretty good with my reading, writing skills. Even last night I was reading a book. I was telling my good friend Virupaksha that I was reading. I actually finished. I was surprised at myself. I finished about 1890 pages. So what we need to understand is each of us has a different set of skills. These are silent handicaps, so it doesn't get recognized like deafness or like blindness. If a child is blind, we know. So there are silent handicaps. There are skill deficits which go undetected or undiagnosed. As Dr. Bandari said this morning, what your mind does not know, your eyes will not see. So if your mind does not know this, your brain does not know this, that these are silent handicaps with which these children in front of me are afflicted, and therefore they are not able to perform. And every time we call their parents and make fun of them in front of everybody in the house, the open houses, you see what can happen to them. It can destroy them. These are called neurodevelopmental disorders. NDD, I call them. NDD. You heard of learning disorders? Often wrongly talked of as learning disability. Disability is what will not cannot be reformed. Disorder is what can be corrected. Learning disorder, ADHD, you can see that with me. I got it down so that I can move around a little bit. Because after 20 minutes I get restless. A lot of your children have that in a class. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They don't know concentration. As you're teaching them for 10 minutes, they have excellent concentration. After that, they get distracted, they're disconnected. Speech and language disorders. A lot of these children have this difficulty, the inability to tell you what actually he's thinking, the answer he has got in his head, but he's unable to talk about it, he's unable to write it after all completely. So they are not found unless you deliberately look for them, which is what you should be doing as teachers. Nobody else can do that. If you are armed with this information that these children can be afflicted with these silent handicaps, you can actually identify them, because the parents cannot be expected to identify them. They can only beat up these children or pinch them or make fun of them after the visit to the class teacher in the open house, right? I've seen this happen with many children when I used to go for the open house of 3 of my children. It's very sad sometimes. So these neurodevelopmental disorders, they cause poor school performance. It is not really the alcoholic father. In spite of the alcoholic father making noise and distracting in their studies at home every day, or the fighter bull of a mother who is fighting with everybody in the house and the child cannot learn, in spite of them, look for these silent handicaps of neurodevelopmental disorder, because invariably, they cause the developmental disorders and this poor school performance. And this is a mixed bag. You'll find it in the handouts. It's a mixed bag. It is not just neurodevelopment disorders, I agree. But you put the neurodevelopment disorders in one bag and mix it with the acquired disorders, emotional disorders, behavior disorders. As a child grows up, you'll find that this child in the class has a lot of behavior problems, emotional problems. Developmental disorders, the most important is LD. LD is learning disorders. Don't tell me disability. Disorders. And the CD is communication disorder. How do we communicate? We communicate with language and speech. Speech is only the output. The CPU, the central processing unit, is the language that goes on in my brain. What my brain uses my tongue and the cheek and the throat and the chest muscles to produce these words. That alone is speech, which is a peripheral output. It is like a monitor and your CPU. Your monitor doesn't really mean much if the CPU is slow. So in most of these children, the CPU, the communication language is slow. And therefore, the output is slow. And you have DCD, developmental coordination disorder. Children who have difficulty even to hold their pen or to button or to lace their shoes. Now, many of these children, they can't even hold a pen. Even many among you, you'll be holding a pen at the tip, correct? And you will fold this finger when you hold the pen. You can notice it yourself. And when you do that, what happens? You press the pen onto the paper. So you can't get cursive writing very well. You sometimes print. So when the speed has to increase for the handwriting, when the child is in 8th standard, it doesn't happen. So the handwriting becomes illegible. And you scold them for the handwriting. What can the child do? That's how his left brain has learned to use his right hand to hold the pen. What can you do? He can't, he can't use his fingers to button his shirt. He can't lace his shoes. What's the point making fun of in front of the other children? So you get my point. These are the difficulties that are not acquired, but they are inborn. It's in the child when he comes out of the mother's womb. ADHD is inborn. In one of our books which describes our difficulties, in one of the books it was written that ADHD is an emotional disorder, it's a behavior disorder. And I had to actually, when the president of the American Psychiatric Association came down, who produces these classificator schemes, when he came down to Cochin for a week for a holiday, I actually showed him that this is not a behavior disorder. It is not in the child's control. So there is a committee that looked into it, of which Ratan was a member, and they reformed it when DSM-5 came. It came under neurodevelopmental disorders, ADHD and tics. So you'll find that these are all inborn. That's what I've written there. And then you acquire some of them. Children who are made fun of every time, they will become either oppositional and hitting the other children, or they go into depression and sadness and are anxious all the time. On Monday morning when they wake up, they can't eat anything, they vomit whatever they eat, they have tummy pain, they have headache, correct? They become anxious. You sit with the child to teach him, and if he has got any of these, you'll find that in 10 minutes time, 15 minutes time, he would say, I want to go to the washroom. He wants to go to the washroom. I see so many girls in the hall. I want to go to the, because it makes me anxious and I have to go to the washroom, correct? When you're anxious, you want to go to the washroom. The poor child is being blamed and we say, it is his acting. He wants to get away from studying. He is truly anxious so that he has to go to the washroom. He is truly anxious that he has to get water, like me having to drink water, correct? Don't make fun of them. They are truly anxious. Or they are sleepy. If any of you is there who is ADHD, you'll find that the brain cells here on your left brain, there's an area here called dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC, actually has to work overtime to be able to hold you down to my, speech that may not be interesting. And when it holds down for 15 minutes, these brain cells, they get exhausted. All of you have heard of mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, correct? The powerhouse of the cell, those who are in chemistry or biology will know, has to create adenosine triphosphate in the mitochondrium, in the powerhouse, fuel, to actually make the brain cells continue to work continuously for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So basically what happens is the same child can actually sit with the computer for maybe 3 hours. Even if there's a cracker in the other house, he will not know. So he has so much of... if you sit with him to make him study, then he starts yawning, like many of you do. Why do you yawn? Because sleep is coming. Because the brain cells get exhausted. So can you blame him? So when you see acquired disorders like tension, sadness, anger, frustration, despair, oppositional behavior, fighting, don't blame the child entirely. Child has to be controlled. There's no doubt about that. I'm not saying the child has to be given up. These are the disorders that actually affect the child's performance. These children, their intelligence may be small. They're not as intelligent as they should be for that class. If they are very intellectually disabled, then they will be sitting at home going to a special school. If they are in your class, it's only marginal intellectual low. The IQ may be low. I don't have a great respect for IQ, so I'm not talking about IQ. For you to understand IQ, it gives an interpretation. I call this a function of what we call metacognition. The ability to understand large meanings from the little things that you see, hear, experience. When you see small things, when you hear small things, you will be able to understand large meanings. That is metacognition. That is the essence of learning, any learning. Many of these children don't have metacognition. For example, you ask me for a personal favor and we don't know each other. Virupaksha has introduced you to me. You come to me, I tell you, you come to my room at 4 o'clock in the evening. And you come at 4 o'clock, you knock on my door, and as you open the door, like very often you will find with me, I'll be screaming into the telephone. If I am screaming into the telephone, the guy who has come for a favor, what will you do? If he is smart, if his metacognition is good, he'll slowly close the door and leave, correct? In fraction of a second, he sees fraction of a behavior in an unknown man like me, and his brain tells him, don't go in now, this guy is not good. Move off. So he closes the door and go. He'll fix up another appointment. Correct? This is metacognition. Many of our children don't have this metacognition. Therefore, you find it difficult to teach them. I was telling Virupaksha this example yesterday because it's what I tell teachers all the time. You teach them addition. 2 pebbles plus 2 pebbles, 2 plus 2 pebbles plus 2 pebbles, 8. Correct? 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 8. So in the next class, when you teach them multiplication, you tell them, therefore, 2 into 4 is 8. Therefore, when you teach them 4 multiplication, 4 into 2 is 8. So some smart children say, oh, this is the same as addition, no? So many teachers say, no, this is different. It is the same, isn't it? Maths teachers here, how many? I'm scared of all the maths teachers. Oh, right. I used to be always scared of them. So, multiplication is a function of addition. It is a shortcut to addition, correct? Am I right? Therefore, these smart fellows, they understand this is a shortcut to addition. So they understand what multiplication is. Similarly, they understand borrowing, the place value, place of 1, place of 10, place of 100. They understand why you borrow. Those who do not have that smartness of metacognition here in this brain area, where the Lord has not put that into them, they don't understand that. So we have to realize these children have intellectual disability.